Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today's video is all about gratitude. Alright, so today's video is all about exercising gratitude and the practical benefits of it, and I'll even be sharing with you 2 different types of gratitude practices that you can implement in your life. Now, in order to understand the practical benefit of gratitude, we have to first understand the mind and the default mode that it's always in. You see, all human and non-human animals have a thing called negativity bias. And negativity bias is where we're always going to prioritize negative stimuli over positive stimuli. And the reason for this is quite simple. It's because it helps us with our survival. So let's say, for example, if I'm a fish and I see my ideal food source over here, like let's say I see a bunch of kelp and kelp is my ideal food source, but I see a shark swimming nearby. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to prioritize the shark over the kelp, and I'm going to say, I can get my kelp somewhere else. Let me avoid the shark. And so negativity bias is really just quite simply a survival mechanism. It's wired right into us. And generally in the animal kingdom, this works out perfectly well. But with human beings, the issue with us is that we also have these higher thinking faculties that allows us to, be imaginative and to project things onto the situation that aren't there. And so a human being is capable of projecting sharks everywhere. And so at that point, what ends up happening is that negativity bias starts to possess us and rule over us. And it's this extreme negative focus everywhere we go, because we're like, oh no, maybe this will turn out badly, or what if this happens, or what if that happens? And we become very, very focused toward the negative very easily because of this. And when negative focus becomes our default state, we start making all of our decisions based off of going away from what it is that we don't want, as opposed to going toward what we do want. We make all of our decisions based off of, oh, let's go away from the shark. Let's run away from all the sharks that we're projecting onto everything. And so what ends up happening in this situation is we miss a lot of opportunities. We make major life decisions based off of fear of what we don't want, as opposed to moving in the direction of what we do want. And we can end up in a life that's really not very fulfilling that way. And not only that, but negative focus also causes us a lot of stress and worry. You see, the human mind is so good at creating negative ideas and thoughts and imagining negative scenarios that the body doesn't necessarily know the difference between us thinking about a scenario and us actually experiencing it. And so we can bring ourselves through all sorts of negative scenarios that we'll never face, but we're bringing ourselves through the emotional beats of that by imagining it happening all the time. So if we've noticed ourselves going into that negative focus mode, what we want to do is we want to be able to pull our focus off of that and into a more positively focused mode. And this is going to take a while to train your mind to do this. And gratitude is one of the ways to train your mind in that direction. And so when we practice positive focus, what we want to do is we want to actually bring our focus toward the things that we actually like and enjoy about a given situation, even if it's a situation that we don't particularly like. So for example, if we are working at a job that we hate, we don't have to lie to ourselves and tell ourselves that we actually like the job, because that's not true. But what we can do is we can start to find the things that we do genuinely enjoy. So for example, I don't like this job, but I like the people that I work with. Or I don't like this job, but at least, it's inside in an air-conditioned space. Or I don't like this job, but at least there are certain elements of it that I do enjoy. And so positive focus is about retraining the mind to focus on what is going well, as opposed to perseverating on what isn't going well. And sometimes there might be this thought of oh no, if I'm not focused on what isn't going well, then maybe I'm not going to leave the job and go to the better job. Should I really be looking at the positives of the job that I don't like? Well, ultimately, that which resists persists. And so if you find yourself in resistance to where you're at, one of the worst things that you can do in terms of actually moving forward and making a change is to be in resistance to what is and staying in negative focus. So basically, when we're in positive focus, we can notice more opportunities arise because we're looking out for the positive as opposed to constantly focusing on the negative. And there was even there was a study that I had heard of where it's like, they got a bunch of people and I guess they surveyed them to say if they saw themselves as a lucky person or an unlucky person. And then they put them in some kind of scenario where, a person could have found money if they were looking around for it, right? So they left like a $20 bill somewhere. And what they found is that the people who rated themselves as being very fortunate and very lucky actually found the $20 bill, but people who considered themselves not so lucky were far less likely to find the $20 bill. And so oftentimes, if we're stuck in negative focus, we will miss the very opportunities that can bring us out of the situation that we don't want to be in. And so one of the best things that we can do is to drop resistance to where we're at right now and to find the things that we find most positive about what we're engaged in, even if it's something that we really, really don't like. Now, when it comes to developing gratitude and positive focus, there can be certain obstacles that arise for people who have experienced traumas around being blindsided. So basically, there's a common pattern that can happen where, let's say, if the parent is in a negative emotional state and like the child is in, let's say, a positive emotional state, and let's say, it's sort of that saying of like misery loves company. Oftentimes parents who have, let's say, deeper feelings of misery, when they see their child in a positive, happy state, there's something about it that makes them feel like far away, like they're being left behind on their emotional wavelength. And so oftentimes unconsciously, these parents will choose times when the child is unhappy or content or kind of minding their own business or, this type of thing, to be the time where they come in and yell at the child, or in the case of really abusive parents, like, hitting the child or being violent toward the child. And so if, let's say, a person has dealt with this kind of trauma where their happiness, or their contentment made them a sitting duck for their parents to kind of pull them down into misery, something like happiness or gratitude is going to feel very, very uncomfortable. And that's because there's this automatic association between the feeling state of happiness and trauma that comes right after it. And so something like practicing positive focus is going to feel very, very unsafe for the child because they're like, oh no, I better stay on my guard or I'm going to be blindsided. I better stay on guard looking at the negative things and keeping myself unhappy. Otherwise, something negative is going to happen because of that. And a person who's dealt with this in childhood will probably be very negatively focused and will probably feel a lot more safe when they're noticing things that are going wrong. Because as long as things are going wrong, it means that, there's not going to be any problems. But as soon as they're happy, as soon as things are going right, that's when the problem is going to come about. And so this person might be constantly looking out for what's going wrong, constantly complaining, constantly in negative focus, because it's what makes them feel like they're staying safe from that trauma. And generally, this person is always going to be hyper vigilant and looking out for things going wrong because they don't want to be blindsided again. Or there can also be other types of traumas around being blindsided where, let's say, if we got all of a sudden there was a sudden loss, or let's say we were suddenly the victim of violence, or let's say we were involved in a car crash or something that we didn't see coming, we didn't expect. This can create a resistance to positive focus as well because we feel like we always have to be hyper vigilant and looking out for what's going wrong. And if this describes you, then you'll want to pair your gratitude practice with something that resolves the feelings of unsafety around positive focus. There can also be resistances to gratitude and positive focus if it feels like we're vindicating some kind of unjust behavior. So for example, let's say that you were working for a tyrannical boss, and what ended up happening is that they were really unfair and really unkind, and they fired you, and it created so much instability in your life. And then later on, you went on to find your dream job. Well, ultimately, practicing gratitude for the dream job from some people's perspective might feel like, oh, am I grateful to my boss for firing me? And if I am, does that give them a green light for all of the terrible things that they did? Or, does it excuse their behavior? Does it make them right for doing what they do? And so we might end up with a resistance to gratitude in these cases where we've experienced something positive, in relation to some injustice that we've experienced earlier. So if this describes you, what you'll want to do is you'll want to separate your gratitude for the circumstances of your life, from, let's say, the approval for the actions that were negative that might have led to those circumstances. And so with those obstacles in mind, I'm going to talk about what we can have gratitude for, so you can see the full scope of what it's possible to be grateful for, and to be able to focus even on the very granular things. But first, I wanted to mention something really quick. So basically, back in July, I started a membership site called the Consciousness Workers Club. Basically, there are I offer like one masterclass per month, and then also one monthly group coaching session that members are able to join live and participate in. And also there's a forum element, so you can interact with other like-minded people and you can interact with me. And ultimately, the master classes and the group coaching sessions, they're recorded and kept in a catalog, so the content that's there on the course will continue growing. And so the Consciousness Workers Club has classes, community, and coaching. And if this is something that you're interested in, I'm going to have a link down below in the description box and in the comments, for anybody who wants to get on the waiting list. So I open up enrollment once a season. So I opened it up back in July, and I won't open it up again until October. But basically, like, if you want to join in October, you might consider getting on the waiting list, which again, I'll leave a link down below. All right, so with that being said, let's go back to the things that we're able to have gratitude for. So basically, we can have gratitude for the big and the small things. So it's very common for us to think about the big things in our life. So it's like, oh, I'm grateful for my home, and I'm grateful for my family, and I'm grateful for my job, and I'm grateful for, just all of the things that are very, very obvious to us, and like the bigger things. But we can also be grateful for things that are small that we would typically take for granted. Like, so for example, I'm really grateful that I have pens and pencils and paper that I can write down my ideas on. And I'm also really grateful that chocolate exists, and I really enjoy the taste of chocolate. I'm really glad that colors exist, and everything is always like bathed in color, which makes the world more beautiful. Or like, I really, really like it when, let's say, I go to the bookstore and I can smell the new book smell. There's something about the whole atmosphere that I'm just really grateful for. Or I'm grateful for the fact that, like, let's say my house is a normal temperature right now. It's not too hot and not too cold. And I'm really grateful for all the music that I've been able to listen to in my life. It wasn't always the case that we could like listen to music at the drop of a hat. Maybe a person might only hear music a few times in their life if they weren't around anybody who could play an instrument. And in addition to being grateful for that which is big and that which is small, we can also be grateful for that which is positive and that which is negative. Now, when it comes to being able to be grateful for something that's positive to us, the main trick there is being able to remember to be grateful. But there can be a real challenge to being grateful for the things that have gone negatively for us. But I've found personally that practicing gratitude for the negative situations in my life and the hardships that I've had has actually been the most transformative form of gratitude that I can practice. So a few years ago in a medicine ceremony, the medicine revealed to me what my life purpose is, which is mercy. And it was showing me that it's like basically given me this gift of this life purpose of mercy and being able to get insights so that I can help people kind of like free themselves up from what they're stuck in and to help people get to a better place by changing their paradigm. So basically this was kind of shown to me, but it also showed to me all of the pain that I've experienced, all of the, a variety of traumas, a variety of different negative situations and losses and different things. And it showed me those things in light of this gift that it had given me of this life purpose. So it's like the life purpose was a really beautiful gift, but part of that gift was all of the negative things that I had experienced up until that point in my life. And so it totally recontextualized all of the negative things that I had experienced as almost like a prerequisite, a curriculum for being able to learn how to do my life purpose. And once I was shown this, it was like gratitude just flowed into me, and I just felt this great sense of being loved by the universe. When at times earlier in life, especially when I was a kid, when I would have misfortunes happen to me, I would just think, oh no, of course that's happened to me. I was like a real Eeyore kind of kid, just always always looking at the negative elements. And so it's just like it totally flipped around the way that, it just, if I were to like kind of make a contrast from like when I was was a kid and really like looking at the negative and like just that perspective of seeing the negative as the positive. It was just a really beautiful experience. And so that transformation that can come from recontextualizing the negative situations in our life as the positive can be just really, really helpful for, just being able to be more in touch with and more trusting of the universe and more trusting of your life. And in Stoic philosophy, there's this concept called amor fati, which means the love of fate. And so to practice the love of fate, it's being able to embrace all things as part of your fate and to truly love that fate no matter what it happens to be. And again, this is a very challenging thing. What if you find that your fate leads you into some really intense misfortunes? And so that's when we, have the challenge of the practice of amor fati, of being grateful for whatever happens to come our way. And this allows us to drop resistance to our life and to find affirmation for our life path. And it also makes us less afraid of experiencing negative things in the future, which helps us stay in positive focus and noticing more positive opportunities as they come up. Now, with this in mind, I'm going to be sharing with you the 2 gratitude practices that you can utilize to shift your focus more toward the positive. So the first one is simply positive focus. So positive focus is where you continuously draw your perspective back to what you genuinely appreciate about a situation, what's genuinely positive. So for example, let's say that you have to take a bus to work, but the bus happens to be running 10 minutes late, which means that you're going to get to work 10 minutes late. And so, somebody who's in negative focus is going to be like, oh no, what's going to happen? I'm going to be behind. Maybe the boss is going to notice and they're not going to be happy about it. And what if this and what if that? Whereas, like, let's say, when it comes to a situation like this, so we can't control, the bus driver, it's like we can't make them go faster. We can't make them get there sooner. And so we're in a state where negative focus isn't even going to help. It's just going to put us in a cycle of worry. And, maybe we'll be kind of in our mind trying to backseat drive the bus driver, hoping that they'll go a couple minutes faster, and we'll feel this sense of urgency and stress. But ultimately, if we recognize that we don't have any power to change that situation, what we can do is we can just drop resistance to what is, and we can start practicing positive focus. Because again, negative focus is only helpful for if you have practical problems that you can work through. So you focus on the problem and then you can resolve it. But there's no problem there to resolve. There's just a problem that's unresolvable. And so instead of focusing on the work situation and getting there late, maybe you focus on, let's say, what's actually going well. It's like, okay, well, maybe they have to wait an extra 10 minutes, but at least it's a nice day out. It'd be much worse if it were raining or if it were really, really hot. Or, on the bus, maybe not a lot of people are on the bus, and so you get extra room. And maybe there's a nice song that's playing on the radio of the bus that you really enjoy. And so basically being able to shift the focus toward the positive in those situations makes the situation go by a lot more bearably, and it saves us a lot of unnecessary rumination and stress. So with positive focus, no matter how negative the situation is, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring our attention off of the negative and to focus on the positive. And this is especially true when there's no practical benefit to focusing on the negative. So if we're focusing on something and we're solving a problem and it's actually like leading through to something, we can justify negative focus in that sense. We're like, okay, here's a problem, I can do this to fix it, and it's going to lead out to this better outcome. But in many situations where we're practicing negative focus, it's what if this happens, and oh no, what if that, and what about this, and this type of thing. And so what we want to do is we want to pull our focus off of that worry and practice training it toward things that we really like. So for example, if I were to practice like positive focus like right now, and it's like I'm like glad that I'm here and I'm recording things and there's going to be a video and people can enjoy the video. But even small things, like I'm looking right now at the doorknob across the room and it's like, oh, that's like a pretty shiny gold color. I like that color. So even little small things like that we can use to train our focus more toward the positive. All right, so with the next gratitude practice, I call this the take nothing for granted practice. And basically it's just as it seems, so we're trying to get as granular as possible about everything that we're grateful for. So for example, like let's say right now I have this script that I've written. And so I had a computer where I could actually type that out. Somebody actually created a program called Microsoft Word, and I was able to type it out here. And it was like I was able to print it out because somebody invented a printer. And now I can sit here with the paper that was taken from nature, and basically it's like all of these things had to come together for this to be possible. And so it's like I'm able to have all of these resources to go about doing what I want to do. Or if I take, for example, something like a pencil, I'm really grateful that pencils exist, for example, because at some point in time, someone had to invent them, and that was probably a very long time ago. And so that invention probably improved over the years to where now it's not made of lead and we have graphite in the pencil instead. So now it's a safe thing to use. I'm grateful for that. And then in order for the pencil to actually get to me, somebody actually has to get the resources from nature to make that. And then they form it into that. And then basically, it had to be put together in some kind of factory. And then, let's say truckers had to bring those to the store. And then I went to the store where grocery workers had stocked the shelves and then checked me out. And then I used a card to get there and a card to get back. And so many different things had to happen just to bring that pencil into my hands so that I could write it. But all of those things happen. And so it's something that we might take it for granted because we don't get to see all of the steps that go into actually bringing something simple like a pencil to fruition, to the point where it's in our hand and we can utilize it. There's so many things like this where we're relying on the work of other people who, make the things. It's like right now I'm looking over at my bed, which is right over there, and it's I have this nice bedspread there, and basically that bedspread had to be made by a variety of different craftspeople, so again the resources had to be gathered, and it had to be formed in this one particular way and sewn together and then sold on whatever website that I got it on, and then it had to be brought here, so there's all sorts of different steps to getting the things that we kind of take for granted, the things that we're just so used to having. And that's the thing about, when it comes to our minds, we have a tendency to focus toward what's going wrong. And whenever things are going right, we don't really take stock of that. So basically, I'm used to having that bedspread. I don't usually think about how much I like it, or I'm used to being able to print out things and read them from a script, and to have everything work out. And so it's really about taking stock of that which the mind kind of edits out. It's the mind just goes, okay, that's going well, that's going well, that's going well. We don't need to focus on that. We don't need to focus on that. We just need to focus on what's going badly. And then that becomes our main point of focus. And so here's a list of things that I'm grateful for that maybe I might take for granted. So for example, it's I'm grateful that I'm healthy right now. I'm grateful for my children and my family in general. I'm grateful that I live in a house. I'm grateful that I have a bed to sleep in. I'm grateful that I have shoes to wear. I'm glad that soap and toothpaste exists so we can practice hygiene, and everything's healthier and that type of thing. If I imagine let's say being in the medieval times or something when these things weren't a thing and people bathed rarely, it's that would be a lot worse than it is now. Now I can take a shower every single day. Now I have tons of books at my disposal. I can read those, or I can even let's say look at taken for granted things about just my experience as a human being. So for example, the fact that we have sensory experiences, the fact that we can see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. So if I imagine I lost my sense of touch or something, it's that would be something that would be, let's say, a lot less immersive. I would feel a lot less immersed in the experience of life if I wasn't able to physically experience what was going on. And then it's just the fact that, let's say in this reality that, it's an interactive reality. I'm not the only being in existence. I can also interact with other people. So these would be just some examples of the things that I might typically take for granted that I could be grateful for. All right, so that's all I have for you for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead, click the like button below and subscribe and leave me a comment down below. Also, if you would like to get on the waiting list for the Consciousness Workers Club, feel free to click the link down below in the description box or in the comments to get on the waiting list, and I will give you updates as, let's say, enrollment reopens for the Consciousness Workers Club. Anyway, that's all I have for you for now, and until next time, keep becoming more you.